Hello and welcome back. What an intense, difficult end of August that I've just been through. If anybody else can relate, let me know down in the comments below. This last 2 weeks for me have been extremely challenging. So much that I nearly forgot to enjoy the little things like the sun. There were times during the days, where something as simple as this, it wasn't even in my, it felt like I didn't care. Many times in life, we're going to go through this up and down cycle. Where you face yourself. A returning aspect knocks on the door. It says, "Hello, did you forget about me?" It's a tough time right now for many people around the world. A lot of changes. A lot of people are being made to do things they don't want. A lot of people are choosing to say no, regardless. But whatever it is you're going through, hold on. You see, life is not only about, it's not only about just being happy, love, light. Because that's one side of an experience you could call good, and the other one you can call bad. A quote comes to mind by Ralph Smart. "You could not see the stars if it were not for the darkness." Your darkness gives you perception. It gives you depth. Your suffering gives you depth. My suffering gives me depth. Each one of these emotions that we go through give us a very specific point of view to view your life, others' life, to view your existence here as you are. And here we can have many points of view. We can have ones that we call good, ones that we call bad, others that we're indifferent to, and each add a piece to how we see ourselves, how we fit into this puzzle. And a video like this is to really help anyone that's going through that intense suffering right now to remember that you're not alone and it will pass. It will pass. Suffering, just like anything else, passes. Oftentimes in these videos I talk about not only suffering as something that passes, but good things as well, to not be attached. And it can be really difficult because if you feel like good things pass, at least in my experience, sometimes it can feel like, then what's the point of it all? Those thoughts come into my mind sometimes, and they can linger. But it's not about never feeling bad. The spiritual journey, everything that this whole self-improvement, yada yada, okay? Whatever it is that you're doing, Reiki, massage, whatever types of therapy you're involved in to try to diminish the negativity and increase the positivity, I just want to share with you now that there is a treasure underneath our suffering. In the same way that when you dig into the earth and you pull up a rock, and this rock might be heavy, and when you hold it, the edges may be sharp. It may cut you. It may hurt you. You may not like the way it looks. The color on the outside may seem very like a rock, nothing special. But let's say it falls, you drop it, hits the ground. You crack it with a hammer. It opens up. And it reveals itself to be a precious jewel, a diamond. Have you ever seen amethyst? A lot of different precious stones, semi-precious stones, look like a regular rock, but the minute you crack into it, it reveals something inside, beauty. But we would have never knew it was there if you didn't break it open and look inside. I can tell you for the last 2 weeks, there were days where I felt extremely confused. Clarity seemed like a distant memory. So in those moments, what does a person do? I say to you now, what can you do in those moments? Have you ever been in such an experience where nothing you do works? Sometimes in life, that's the way it goes. But it's not without its value. If you put your hand in some cold water, it's going to feel cold at first. Let's say you remove it, put it in, remove it, put it back in. Eventually, your body will become accustomed to the temperature, and it won't seem quite as difficult. And the same thing goes for suffering. Each time we face an old aspect of ourselves, screaming, begging for time in your vessel, we can recognize that we're building a tolerance, and that each time we recognize that we've become polarized, that polarization itself gives us a contrast. We were here, now we're here. Oh, so now we can see things from that other perspective. Where do you think most of the wisdom comes from? It's not from merely staying in the center and observing. It's from having dealt with each side, having traveled not as the center, but as the witness, which you always are. You see things and you learn things that you could only have learned from this side. When you're suffering, there's things you will learn that you cannot when you're feeling good. And vice versa. Another quote from Ralph Smart, Infinite Waters. The light can blind you from the truth. And I found this to be true myself. I've always been very courageous, a warrior type. I am not afraid to feel my suffering, although sometimes I can go into my own suffering unnecessarily. So it's difficult sometimes to not become a martyr. We need to learn this. Yes, suffering has value, but don't ask for it. Sometimes we do. And it's by asking for it, when it comes, that we recognize, oh, wait a minute, I asked for this. Certain things can only be seen in the light. Certain things can only be seen from the darkness. Each level in between gives you a different perspective to view life situations, your thoughts about the situations you find yourself in. They also humble you. One of the great things I've found about suffering is that it has this humbling quality about it. Oftentimes, when I rest in the light for too long, I can find myself lifting a bit too high and kind of losing a bit of perspective that the humility had given me from that suffering, that negative, you'll call it negative if you want. It's not really negative. It just feels like a bad thing because we don't want it. So when we're there, it shows us things once again. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I often post stuff like, go through your suffering, feel your pain, don't avoid the pain, go through it. And when I say go through it, this is exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about in this video. And the reason I also mention things like, which is true, that suffering will pass and happiness will pass, is so that you can find the courage to go through that suffering when you find yourself there. What type of madness would it be to avoid what you're already feeling, or to deny, I should say, what it is you're currently experiencing? When you recognize and you say, this is it, here it is, here I am, these are the feelings. And sometimes you'll find you can do something about it, and sometimes you'll find you can't. When you cannot, this is where you need to learn to love yourself. Love yourself, be easy on yourself. Don't try to steer your thinking too much. Don't try to change what's going on in your mind, in your body. Don't overdo it, because you could lose yourself in this chaotic mindset where you're just trying to get rid of it. The mind has this ability to just see the truth, and it can let go, but the body cannot. So oftentimes when you find yourself in this position where your mind seems to just understand, what I'm experiencing is not helping me in this moment, I am hurting, it might say, the body can't just drop that. And even in of course, the greater picture, it's helping you, which is what this video is about. But when you're in the experience of it, it's not pleasant. So your mind sees that it's easy to drop a problem, what seems like an issue, which seems like something that's bad. Mind can look past. Point is, body oftentimes cannot. And this disconnect between the mind looking at the feelings you're feeling, okay, these two things can create that split, which is what I was experiencing very heavily. To be honest with you, my thoughts were everywhere. What does a person do? What can you do when you find yourself buried underneath a mountain? Sometimes those you wouldn't expect will show up in those moments. I want to remind you that you're not alone here. I want to remind you that you don't need to do all of this alone. And this is one of the great things that I'm learning, especially over this last couple of weeks, that there will be people who come into your life, who are already there maybe, who will help you and support you, and that it is okay. And I leave you with that. So wherever you are around the world, whatever time it is that you're watching this video, thank you, thank you, thank you. Peace. Stay strong, warriors.